We're excited. A few weeks ago, we announced the partnership with Duet AI from Google Cloud. So we're bringing the power of AI assistance to our billing console. Duet AI can provide assistance to our customers to answer basic questions on how to use our billing tools.
Once we have these forecasts gathered, we're able to now load the budgets into our cloud financial management tool and see a side-by-side comparison of actuals versus forecasted budgets. This drives insights into what apps are overspending, and we can then sit down with these teams and talk through optimization plans to help reduce the gap to their original budgets.
And so in this case, higher utilization doesn't correlate with lower cost. The same is true of coverage as well. But if we calculate ESR for these environments, you can see that ESR is higher in environment A than it is in environment B. And so ESR, I always say ESR is the truth teller. ESR will always tell you how to maximize your savings and always lead you into the best savings possible.
It's critical for business and the teams running the application to be in alignment. If business needs to launch a new offering or feature, they need to make sure that they know the true cost that it's actually going to cost to launch this. Bring in your engineering managers or your SRE managers to say what the cost of launching this service is, so you don't have a disconnect on the cost to launch and deploy at scale.
Well, if everything looks good, we'll write the automation that will go out there and make changes in public cloud accounts I've never logged into personally, at least in the console. And we drive the savings that way.
All right. Good morning, everybody. This is September 14th here in the US anyway. And this is the September FinOps Summit. So we are trying a little bit of a different format today. Typically, we do an hour and a half or 2 hour long summit. And in that longer format of the summit, we typically have breakout rooms at the end and networking at the beginning. But we're getting some feedback that it's hard for people in the beginning of their day or the middle of the day or the end of the day, depending where they are, to spend that much time. So what we've done this month is actually break apart the summit into 2 parts. There's this hour-long content session that's going to be a great recap of the Google Next conference that happened back, I guess it's been 2 weeks ago now, August 30th and 31st in San Francisco. And then we're also going to do some highlights from some of the best sessions from the FinOps X conference. And we're going to hear some updates about the community and various programs like our favorite open source project, Focus. So welcome. This is going to be a jam-packed 1 hour long session. We're going to do about 8 minutes per talk. So you'll see us moving fast and moving the speakers quickly through it. And we'll kick off from there. So for those of you who are new to us, we are the FinOps Foundation. So we are a membership-based trade association that is focused on advancing the people who manage the value of cloud. So myself and our 25 staff who are in 6 different countries, we all work for the Linux Foundation, which is a large nonprofit consortium. And we are funded by individual training from all of you, as well as corporate memberships. So we're free for end user practitioners to join, and we let vendors join for a fee. And all of that goes toward advancing the programs that help all of you get better at advancing the value of cloud, and hopefully also your careers as part of that through community, connections, education, certification, best practices, and standards. So because this is a forum where you can all jump into the chat, and we have upcoming conversation forums, we do want to share the code of conduct. First of all, we want everybody to contribute, but also be respectful in the way you show up. I would just say be kind, but also respectful of everyone else's time. Don't dominate the conversation, leave room for others. Treat others as you would like to be treated, as I think all of our mothers told us at one point. And for those of you who sell services or technology or anything else, please don't do any advertisements or tell people to start free trials or say you're the best at the thing, but please do share your knowledge because you also know a ton about this space. Small note, in the world of AI, we've had a lot of bots joining former meetings. We're not allowing the use of bots because these meetings are recorded, and we've added captions that if anyone is hard of hearing or is struggling to understand the words through the audio, you can actually enable captions in Zoom now. And of course, please don't share any confidential information through any of our forums. So this is a brand new slide. We've been getting a lot of questions about all the programs we do and how they're structured in different places. So because we're a membership-based trade association, we have 2 types of programs. We have programs that are open to the broad general public. And then we also have programs that are really designed for our members who have joined the foundation, either as end user practitioners or as vendor members as well. So we're going to talk about a few of these programs today, particularly the community events. But on the bottom, you'll see there's a bunch of stuff that you can access if you're not currently a member of the foundation. All of that is available via FinOps.org. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the member programs as well, like the first one of those being the San Francisco Roadshow. So these roadshow events are very, I would say, heavily produced, curated events that we do in major cities, typically with really great content from practitioners and typically in awesome venues. So this last one we did on August 30th was in San Francisco. About 150 practitioner members and vendor members from the community joined us. This one was attached to Google Next. And we had just a really great conversations on the rooftop of the San Francisco MoMA. That's probably the worst picture of me from the conference, unfortunately, but that's the one that was chosen for this slide. But we had great other folks there, like Kim Weir from Target, who is our TAC chairperson, and Bindu Sharma, who works in a lot of our working groups and leads the sustainability group. Courtney Bowman from General Mills, and you can see in the background there a bunch of folks who enjoyed great conversation on the roof of the MoMA. There's a bunch more of these coming up that we want to invite our members to in key cities. So there's DC one is the next one that is focused on government, but is open to those not in government as well. There's Paris coming up, which that one actually, I'm bummed I'm not going to the Paris one. It is actually in the Eiffel Tower, about 10 floors up with a view of the city. So that one's going to be pretty amazing. London, Munich, and then Seattle and Vegas are actually attached to the cloud conferences. So Seattle is attached to Microsoft Ignite, and then the Vegas one is attached to reInvent. So those are going to be particularly big ones with a great mix of people. If you're not a member of the foundation, we also have meetups that are open to the broad general public and are actually in more locations. The meetups are practitioner-led. They tend to be a little bit smaller, a little more informal, but a great way to connect with your local communities as you go. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we're splitting this summit into two parts. It's no longer a 2-hour summit. We now have a 1-hour content session, which is this one. And then we have now added community member calls. So these are coming in every major territory in the US where we have, around the world, in the US, Europe, and Asia Pacific, where we have community. We're working on a Latin American one right now as well. But these are a chance for you as practitioners or vendor members to join, have conversations with your local community. No presentations, just conversation and follow-ons from these summits. Really interesting thing here as well, you don't have to just join the one from your area. Mike Fuller, co-author of the FinOps book, who's based in Australia, often is joining the one in the US Northeast because it's a time that actually works well for him. So consider joining other time zones as well and meeting people in other locations. And last thing on my list before we get into the Google Next recap and all the content, I want to give a big shout out to the team at Apple, who was one of our first enterprise premier members who joined the foundation formally. We added a FinOps certified enterprise program that is a whole set of criteria around certification and contribution and processes using the FinOps assessment that's free and open source on the website. And they're the latest FinOps certified enterprise. At FinOps X, we also announced Fidelity and JP Morgan Chase had achieved the certification. If you're interested in becoming FinOps certified as an enterprise, right, this is the organizational certification as opposed to the individual practitioner certification. Check out the website, details are there. But thanks for all the work and congrats to William, to Jenny, and to Benjamin, who've all been great parts of the community and done a lot of work to advance the FinOps practice at Apple. So with that, wanted to pass to Rupa Patel. We also had Sarah McMullen on the slide because she was meant to be here, but unfortunately couldn't make it today. And Rupa is going to share a recap of product announcements and feature announcements related to FinOps from the Google Next conference. And as a preview for the next couple conferences or couple summits we're doing, we're going to do one of these recaps in each of the next 3 months. So Google is this month, we'll do the Microsoft Ignite conference next month, and then we'll follow up with the AWS reInvent conference in December. So Rupa gets to set the tone and the pace here for the first set of announcements and pass it to you. Over to you, Rupa.
Great to be here today. I just wanted to share some announcements from Cloud Next. So first and foremost, we are organized within our Google Cloud billing within the FinOps Foundation framework of inform, operate, and optimize. So I'm going to give some announcements in that same framework. So as we know, LLMs have the power to bridge business and technical acumen, and what better place to start than with billing. We're excited. A few weeks ago, we announced the partnership with Duet AI from Google Cloud. So we're bringing the power of AI assistance to our billing console. Duet AI can provide assistance to our customers to answer basic questions on how to use our billing tools. In fact, we actually put the Duet AI to the test to measure its FinOps IQ. We are training it with a sample of certified FinOps level from the FinOps certification. We have a really robust model and roadmap around Gen AI, and our focus is really on prioritizing accuracy first. So more to come in the future. In addition to enriching our foundational data with more granular cost data that we've announced, we've also launched a few new fields to our BigQuery exports. In the price export, we're actually making it more easy for you to actually join the price export with the detailed billing export table with a couple fields. So we've actually recently launched fields that will allow you to connect the two exports. We have sample queries available in our public documentations where you can actually learn how to do that. Specifically, we've added effective pricing, tier start amount, pricing unit, and pricing quantity to our detailed billing export fields. Additionally, we've added some seller-related fields into our billing exports as well, so you can actually see the legal name of the partner and transaction type of the seller in certain regions. It goes without saying, labels are a great way to organize your cost data and be able to conduct cost allocation. And late last year, we launched tags in our billing export, which allows you to actually conduct cost allocation much more easily. We also have a great white paper on tags versus labels that you're able to find on our public site. One thing we're excited to announce as of a couple weeks ago is a preview of our pricing API. So for those of you who are familiar, we do have a catalog API, but the pricing API is actually an improvement over the existing billing catalog API. It provides you with not only list prices, but account-specific contractual pricing and discounts for all available SKUs according to your contract. There's also additional metadata like products and service family, region, discount type, and also SKU groups. So you're able to actually compare SKU prices and discounts across resources, regions, SKU groups. So this QR code will actually give you a little bit more information as well. And so by end of year, we're hoping to get batch queries for all SKU prices. And for next year, we have a really, really exciting roadmap that will actually continue to provide visibility of pricing for support SKUs and provide price revision history as well. So we're really, really, really excited to announce the FinOps Hub. This is one of our major announcements at Google Cloud Next. What we heard from our FinOps customers is that the optimization journey is fragmented. There are too many places that you need to go, constant switching between rate and usage optimizations, and it further exacerbated issues. So a couple weeks ago, we launched our new FinOps Hub for the public. Think of this as your one-stop optimization shop for FinOps. When you land on this page, you should understand pretty quickly your top saving opportunities, whether that's by a specific service or a specific general optimization suggestion. And in addition to optimization suggestions, there may be more immediate items you want to take care of right away that also have a cost impact, like an expired committed use discount or unattended project. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. We are also launching the ability to see a personalized FinOps score. So this uses basically an advanced ML to basically score you on how you adhere to optimization best practices that we recommend. And some of those best practices include monitoring spend by actively logging in and using the cloud billing tools, optimizing resources, viewing on-demand versus committed spend, and automating practices such as enabling BigQuery export and API adoption. So there's a lot of great things that go into that score. But what's a good score without some pointers on how to improve? This is where your personalized insights report come in handy by sharing what you can do to improve. So to improve, you can set a budget alert or give additional members on your team read-only permissions to access. The score not only reflects your adherence to optimization, but it also reflects how your resources are getting utilized. So if your traffic is up on a resource that had low utilization, it would also be reflected here. As you improve your FinOps capabilities, or as we launch more FinOps capabilities, your score and report will automatically be updated. This report card is a helpful guide for your optimization efforts. We've also invested in giving you greater context into your performance as well, which I'll show you on the next slide. Customers pretty frequently ask us, how are we doing relative to our industry peers? And that's why we develop peer benchmarks for both the FinOps Hub score and the committed use discount optimization rate calculations. Your peer benchmark score is based on multiple dimensions with no one organization influencing the score by 2%, and so that ensures basically the anonymity of data. If there aren't enough peers in your benchmark, we simply just don't calculate the score, and you're opted in by default. But I think most importantly, now you can understand whether your FinOps best practices are on par for your industry, if they're ahead or potentially behind. So this data is here to help inform you on your FinOps journey. So as we know, if you have read anything from the FinOps Foundation, empowering engineers to take action has been the #1 challenge for FinOps practitioners for several years. While engineers focus on delivering innovation quickly, their decisions may result into significant cost overruns and run through a group budget pretty quickly. But if we empowered engineers to create their own budgets and actually get notification when their spend is projected to exceed the budget, they can take proactive action. So we're really excited to allow project owners and editors to now view and create budgets for single project scope, and also get email notifications for forecasted and actual spend alert. This feature is available in public preview if you scan that code. And lastly, I'll leave it with the next slide, which is we are working on the FinOps Foundation on focus. The open cost and usage specification, the slide before this. Google has been highly invested in the focus standard. We have contributed sample data for compute engine, tax standard, and detailed billing exports, and are very excited to work on this initiative. We have a couple of folks in different working groups, and very, very excited to see the V1 come to life. So lastly, we'd love to just continue the conversation. We have our Google Cloud Slack channel that you can ask any questions on, and we'll be chatting in that forum as well.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Rupa. Even with the delay, you hit the timing spot on. So yeah, and I also want to give a shout out to, Google is one of the first, was the first cloud to join the FinOps Foundation, and one of the first people to sign up for Focus. So excited to see what you all do with that data in your exports and otherwise. I want to give a quick update on that specification. It is targeted to help normalize cloud spend across all the clouds. The September update on this is that there are now 80 different member organizations, 55 member organizations, 80 individual contributors who are working to help make cloud billing easier. This is an open source, free project. Anyone can join it. You don't have to be a member of the FinOps Foundation. And there are 7 squads operating to do things like normalize spend data, normalize pricing data, normalize product and resource metadata, really create a common schema for cloud billing that can be applied not just to the big clouds, but also to platform as a service, software as a service, and eventually even on-prem and hybrid spending. There are 7 squads working on this to do practitioner use case libraries, focus sample data sets, and there's also data converters coming with our November 1.0 release that is coming for Azure, Google, AWS, and Oracle Cloud. The thing we're going to get into next year is really focusing on enterprise adoption of this once it lands. A couple new members to highlight. Meta has joined formerly the program, Oracle Cloud, and Atlassian to contribute to that. And tying together the focus theme a bit as we kick off the next talk, Daniel and Brent from Capital One are going to talk about automation in reducing your cloud bill. But Brent, I wonder if you can share a little bit about why Capital One is leaning into open standards and how you're participating in that project.
Yeah, no. So first, I'd like to be able to say that we are both thrilled and honored to be able to join the FinOps Foundation as an enterprise member. Anybody that's had the opportunity to be able to see Capital One and our involvement here knows that we've got a deep commitment to both the FinOps discipline as well as the professionals who are helping shape the future. We're firmly committed to the immense value that the FinOps framework starts to be able to bring to the organizations as we kind of navigate the complexities of the cloud cost environment. We're excited about the continued growth and evolution of FinOps and dedicated to supporting its advancement as we start to be able to play an increasing pivotal role, pushing industry shaping projects like Focus. So together, we really look forward to driving innovation, efficiency, and excellence in the cloud financial management arena. So tell you what, I'm going to go ahead, Dan, if you don't mind, I'm going to let you kick off and then I'll come in on the backside of this presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. So this first slide here is about kind of Capital One's homegrown financial management tool with a little bit of a snapshot or picture of it right here. Back when we started on our cloud journey, we used a third-party tool and it worked for us for a while. But as we continued to grow and scale, we built a very mature financial treatments and processes to our costs, outgrowing the third-party vendor. So we invested in a multi-year project to build our own tool that's custom to Capital One with all of our specific hierarchy and nuances we have at the company. We're able to use this tool as a source of truth for cloud costs, and we now charge back 100% of all costs. It's been foundational for our FinOps practice, unlocking all of the analytics and insights to drive wins and efficiencies within the cloud. Next slide, please. Next up is cloud forecasting. So everyone knows that forecasting is a big challenge. It's certainly true for us. Early on, we did forecasting centrally with a tops-down approach, which led to inaccurate forecasts. Repeatedly, we were overshooting our budget for multiple years. So we made two material investments here. One was driving local ownership and accountability, and the other one was tooling. So when talking about local accountability, we now have tech and finance partnering on our top spending applications, talking through month-to-month variances, key initiatives that can impact cloud spend, and sign off on budget totals at the application all the way to the line of business level. Once we have these forecasts gathered, we're able to now load the budgets into our cloud financial management tool and see a side-by-side comparison of actuals versus forecasted budgets. This drives insights into what apps are overspending, and we can then sit down with these teams and talk through optimization plans to help reduce the gap to their original budgets. As a result, we've been tracking it within about 1% of our original budget, which is something that we never really thought we'd ever be able to get to. The next thing we're doing is experimenting with ML to assist with our cloud forecasting, which is what we're seeing on this slide. This has not fully replaced our human forecasts, but as we continue to gain confidence in the tooling and the models, we look to leverage this more and more in this process. And the next slide. And a last example here is how centrally our people and our FinOps teams are using the data to impact our business. We're always keeping an eye on anomalies and variances that pop in our tools. And depending on the dollar amount, we like to form SWAT teams to investigate the issue and come up with an action plan to remediate if possible. In this example, we have a very colorful chart here in which the blue chart represents a specific use case in which one of our business's data scanning tools. You can see that the costs over last year were rising at a large rate, and we identified that with a new policy implemented, the team was increasing their costs month over month. We were able to influence the stakeholders on this new policy and team and create some exceptions to the policy, as well as drive some cloud architecture changes that drove a significant reduction in associated costs for the tool. And next up, Brent's going to continue the conversation on a few other kind of technologies we're working on.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. So, and I know this could probably be an overused term within the industry, but for us at Capital One, we continually try to be able to shift left to be able to empower our developers. We know that a lot of times our developers have all sorts of different dynamics that they're responsible for, everything from security to resiliency. So cost doesn't necessarily always rise to the top. So what we're trying to be able to do right now is really push the implications of infrastructure changes into the actual CI/CD pipeline. So as our development teams are starting to make changes, they can actually see the cost implications of those changes. On a similar line of thought, just because a lot of times as we're deploying infrastructure, cost isn't top of mind. We try to be able to put guardrails in place, specifically within our CI/CD pipelines that help guide our development teams towards the most cost-efficient implementation of a particular service. The last piece is, just in order to be able to help our development teams as they go through, retroactively take a look at their deployments and figure out where do they have opportunities to be able to make improvements. We try to be able to provide some very clear sizing recommendations based on telemetry data we're collecting out of the environment. Let's go next screen real fast. So along the same lines of leveraging telemetry data to be able to provide recommendations, we as Capital One, we've tried to be able to lean into it across all of our services just to be able to give us a better perspective on where there are some opportunities. One of those areas would happen to be along the lines of, we'll say, like technology evolution. Which of our services would actually benefit from, moving from a conventional service over to like an AWS based service? Where would we need to be able to take a look at like different sizing recommendations if we're experiencing greater packet loss or jitter that would indicate to us that an application happens to be under duress at some point here. It also allows us, by ingesting the telemetry data, it allows us to be able to get a very clear perspective, especially as we start to be able to take a look at like along the lines of resiliency, like what are the cost implications of some of the architectural choices that we happen to make. Let's go through, if you don't mind, we'll go to the next slide real fast. This is one of my personal favorite slides right here. It's probably a common theme that we're starting to be able to see in 2023 and expect to be able to see in 2024. Just leveraging machine learning throughout all of our processes, just to be able to either accelerate the cost savings potential or come up with better recommendations or implementations for our dev teams. The first would be like S3 lifecycle recommendations. S3, as you know, produces a lot of different contextual data, everything from sizing to object access patterns. We're able to leverage that to be able to come up with customized lifecycle recommendations when the traditional intelligent tiering may not always make sense. Dan touched on it earlier, but another great use case that we've really been able to use machine learning for is our spend anomaly detection. Rather than waiting for days or weeks after the fact, if we happen to be able to have an anomalous event, either in application or more like a spend category level, we're able to recognize it in near real time, just to be able to proactively either address it or at least understand it. The last piece that we're really leveraging machine learning for here is to be able to make sure that we come up with appropriate compute sizing recommendations. Rather than just using baseline telemetry data, we're able to go through and actually take a look at the historical performance of either individualized instances or clusters over time, to be able to make sure that we can apply the appropriate algorithms to be able to come up with a clear recommendation that meets their particular use case. We'll go next slide real fast. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.
Brent and Dan, thank you for sharing all of that. There's a bunch of questions in the chat. If you wouldn't mind jumping in and answering the ones that you can. And folks, if you want to see their full session, it is available on our YouTube, the longer version. And I know at least one or two of them are in the Slack as well. And so good to have Capital One in here. I mean, you all have been really pioneers with Cloud Custodian and your practices for so many years. So thank you for being a part of the foundation.
Thank you.
So we also have a set of premier vendor members who join the foundation to contribute best practices. As I mentioned, Google and Rupa were one of the first of those. We have a number of clouds as well, like Microsoft and Oracle and Tencent, and the majority of the platforms in the FinOps space and consultancies as well. Thank you to all of them for supporting the foundation. And really what we see so many of them do, leading in with working groups, best practices, and sharing the knowledge they have across the thousands and thousands and millions, in some cases, customers of these folks. Many of these folks, when they join us as peer members, also join our governing board. We've got a couple new ones we're going to hear from in the coming months, from Tango into the new. We also have folks like Ann Johnston from Capital One, who recently joined when Capital One joined, and a couple more coming that we're going to announce shortly, big enterprises who are in this. But we want to hear today from really a longtime contributor to the FinOps Foundation and a part of the governing board member, Erik Carlin, who, and Erik, I want to give you a shout out. You've been one of the people as vendors in the foundation who's done the best job of sharing best practices and not pitching, as your presentation today does. So please tell us about effective savings rate.
Cool. Thanks, JR. Yeah, like JR said, we're excited to share best practices. That's kind of our goal of contributing and participating in the FinOps Foundation. One of those is effective savings rate, which is the ultimate rate optimization metric. Notice we're talking about rate optimization. So we're in the world of RI, savings plans, and CUDs and flex CUDs in Google. And typically, the efficacy of how well we're doing with these instruments on saving money is measured with input metrics like utilization and coverage. And these are not unhelpful, but one, they don't always lead to optimal savings. We're going to show some examples of kind of limitations of using just those metrics alone in a second. But two, and maybe more importantly, is it doesn't fundamentally answer the question of how much are you saving at the end of the day, right? In cloud, you've got usage. It can be dynamic usage that's scaling up and down. And you've got different products that you might be covering with these instruments that are different sizes in different regions. They all have different discount rates. And so it's sort of maddening when you think of the complexity of all of that. And really what you care about is at the end of the day, when all is said and done, how much did I actually save off of the on-demand rate? And cloud providers will advertise, up to 72% off or make claims like this. And there are cases very isolated where that's true, but in general, no one actually achieves those rates. So the question is, what are you actually saving through the use of your commit discount-based efforts? And two, whatever that is that good? Is that bad? How do you know? And so ESR is the way you can answer that question. The ESR formula is actually quite simple. It's just savings over on-demand equivalent rates. So what did you save at the end of the day when everything's sort of baked in over what would you have spent if you had no discounts at all? And notice that's completely cloud agnostic. ESR can be calculated in all three clouds. So next slide, JR. Let's just take a look at an example of where, in this case, utilization is something you can't rely on to maximize savings. So what I've done here is I've got two environments, A and B. The purple boxes represent EC2 instances. This is a simple example. The light gray boxes represent RIs. And if you look at the table on the right, the utilization for A is less than the utilization for environment B, but the cost of environment A is actually less than the cost of environment B. And so in this case, higher utilization doesn't correlate with lower cost. The same is true of coverage as well. But if we calculate ESR for these environments, you can see that ESR is higher in environment A than it is in environment B. And so ESR, I always say ESR is the truth teller. ESR will always tell you how to maximize your savings and always lead you into the best savings possible. I think you skipped a slide, JR, if you go back one. The same is true of coverage. And you can see in environment A, your coverage is lower in A than it is in B, but your cost of B is actually higher. So again, the same can happen with coverage where the higher coverage might not necessarily lead to the lowest cost. In fact, ESR reveals something interesting here. You can see you actually have a negative ESR for environment B, which means you'd be better off having no commit discounts than running them. You pay less with on-demand. And so again, ESR is the truth teller. And always guides you to kind of the maximum savings outcome. So 2 slides ahead now, JR. The astute person may say, well, you have to look at coverage and utilization together. Well, let's look at this particular use case, which is actually a very common pattern. This is one of our customers. Anytime you take advantage of auto scaling, you're going to workload pattern that sort of is cyclical like this. What we find most people do is they end up covering at the trough, which is that lower blue line there. In other words, they optimize for 100% utilization and they sacrifice coverage. The ESR in that situation is 24.6%. So you're getting 24% off the on-demand rate. But is that the optimal point? The answer is no. The red line above is actually the optimal point. In order to achieve that, you have to purposely reduce your utilization while increasing your coverage. And you can see in the table there, it's actually about 87% coverage, 86% utilization, and your ESR goes up dramatically to 37%. So how do you find that point? Next slide, you can use ESR to do that. In this chart here, the x-axis represents the coverage. The left vertical red line is the trough. And all we do is we measure ESR at each point as we're increasing coverage. And you can see that ESR increases, sort of peaks, and then begins to trail off. And that max point there is the optimal coverage point. And so again, ESR is very powerful in being able to not have to rely on utilization and coverage, but be able to find optimal points to save money. Just to put this in perspective and quantify it, for this one workload, for this one customer, the difference between the trough coverage point and the optimal coverage point was about $375,000 a year. And so, this can be have meaningful impact to your costs if you take advantage of it. Okay, next slide. One of the wonderful things about ESR is that it's quantifiable. And so what this chart here shows is, we've been collecting ESR data points for years now. We have thousands of them, and we can plot them. So on the x-axis here, you have usage, like how much is being used. It goes out to millions of dollars, but I've truncated it 600,000 just to make it more readable. It doesn't change the data. And on the y-axis, you've got ESR. And so you get this scatter plot that says at different spend points, what ESR are people achieving? And you can see in the red, you tend to have small spend customers that either actually lose money, which is possible with commit-based discounts, or generate no savings. They're not using them at all. In yellow, you have sort of the fat middle where most people end up, which is generally around 20 to 25%. And then that green line represents the 98th percentile, which is around 42%. And if you're really crushing it, you're getting up into the high 40s or maybe even the 50s. But this is great because now we're able to sort of benchmark and understand, what does good look like? And if you have a certain ESR, how do you take your approach to commit-based discounts and move from whatever ESR you're achieving to higher levels of ESR? So next slide. The cool thing is this also correlates with the F2 state of FinOps analysis that was done. This is the chart on capabilities that's basically run descending. And you can see commit-based discounts there is outlined in yellow is sort of towards the end, which means there aren't many customers in our community that are really feel like they're excelling at this. And so again, ESR allows us to sort of measure where you're at today. What does it look like to be running? What are my peers achieving? And how do we get there? And so, our mission with ESR is really to help the community just accelerate and improve their efforts in commit-based discounts. So last slide. ESR going forward. One is, if you want to learn more about ESR, we set up a basic microsite at effectivesavingsrate.com. There's also a link to a free Google sheet you can use to calculate your own ESR on AWS for AWS customers. Our vision is that this becomes a standard FinOps KPI that can be benchmarked against industry or even clouds. And so what does great look like on Google versus Azure versus AWS? And how do I get from where I'm at to a higher ESR? ESR plus focus. I think of this as peanut butter and jelly right now. We have to calculate ESR differently on AWS than we do Google, than we do on Azure. And with focus, we can have a single common ESR implementation that really normalizes across clouds. And lastly, but perhaps most importantly, ESR adoption is being discussed as part of the commitment-based discount working group. If you're interested in this and want to learn more, I invite you to join the conversation on the Slack channel, or please don't hesitate to DM me. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to engage and try to be helpful in any way possible.
Awesome. I'm going to start calling you Dr. ESR, I think, because I always learn more about that every time you talk. So, Erik, thank you again for all the support. For everyone else, we have these working groups running for the member community. The upcoming one, commitment-based discount. Hopefully we include ESR as a metric. Erik's proposing ESR as an ongoing working group, but there's lots of ways that you all can plug in if this is something you want to get involved with. Again, Erik's full presentation from X is on the YouTube. And on the topic of working groups and what we call special interest groups, I want to announce that we are upgrading the sustainability working group into what we call a special interest group. Working groups are temporary, special interest groups are permanent. We see sustainability as a key intersection point for the FinOps practice with a lot of overlapping incentives, teamwork, et cetera. So this special interest group is meeting every Friday at 10 a.m. CST, focusing on defining how sustainability intersects with FinOps through education, advocacy, data, core best practices, et cetera. So definitely something to keep a close look on as we see this also ending up as part of some upcoming framework updates. The Technical Advisory Council owns the FinOps framework. This is a cross-functional team. You may recognize some of the faces from earlier photos of clouds, of practitioners, of platforms, of consultants who define best practices and sign off on the working group standards. Alee Whitman recently joined the Technical Advisory Council. We featured her on the last summit. I think, Alee, you've got probably the most summit attendance speaking in the last few. So we promise to give you a break after this one. But wanted to invite you, because you did such a great talk at FinOps X, to share more about savings or spend reduction. Welcome.
Awesome.
Alee.
Thanks, JR. And you can always count on me. I love being able to speak here. So thanks for always including me. For folks that don't know me, hi, everyone. My name is Alee Whitman, and I'm a senior staff product engineer at the Walt Disney Company. Today, I'm going to share a portion of my FinOps X talk so you can understand how we think about and track data-driven savings. So first, let's bring it back to the savings. How many times do you say the word savings in your role? What does savings actually mean? If you ask your engineering teams and your finance teams, what is savings? Will they give you the same answer? Mine wouldn't. So we took a step back and defined what a savings is so that everyone was on the same page and stopped incorrectly using the S word. So what actually is a savings? We define savings as the difference between actual cost and budget. It's the cash you have in your hand. If you don't have a budget, you don't have a savings. So if it's not a savings, then what is it? It could be a spend reduction, which are optimization activities that cuts back on unnecessary costs. A savings is a spend reduction, but a spend reduction isn't always a savings. The key difference is that a spend reduction reduces run rate and lowers cost, but might not be a savings because it's above your budget and you don't actually have that cash in hand. A spend reduction is what most of your engineering teams mean when they say savings. So how do we get the conversation to shift from where a savings is that finance term and a spend reduction is your engineering term? Lastly, there's cost avoidance. This is what folks want to get to, because if they don't have to reduce your cost, it means you did it correctly from the get-go. So how can you avoid these costs? This is a cost you might experience if you didn't action. Think of this as your future costs. For example, there's architecting for optimization prior to deployment, or catching a spend increase immediately before it has a chance to really increase your run rate for future months. Cost avoidance provides proactive cost optimization because you can optimize before you actually incur that cost. For a team to have a savings, they need to first set their budget. How do you think about budgeting? Who needs to be involved in budgets? Who sets and owns a budget, and at what granularity? Budgets are something we plan to continually work on and get more accurate. This is an area where we're planning to incorporate more machine learning to get better trends or stress test forecast. I think Cap One just brought this up. Machine learning and different areas to use this is always a big area of improvement. This is an area where at a high level, we look at previous trends. What's actually happening in our accounts? How do we know what's running and our current costs? You also need to identify business priorities. It's critical for the business teams running the application. It's critical for business and the teams running the application to be in alignment. If business needs to launch a new offering or feature, they need to make sure that they know the true cost that it's actually going to cost to launch this. Bring in your engineering managers or your SRE managers to say what the cost of launching this service is, so you don't have a disconnect on the cost to launch and deploy at scale. Both business and IT need to be accountable for budget. At a high level, budget should take into account increases. Think of this as cost to build versus cost to run. What are the business priorities coming this year? Do you have any plans for decreases or plans to decommission applications? Seasonality, we have many applications that are seasonal at our organization. So teams need to account for these events or periods in their budgets. For workloads that are more steady state, we typically start with run rate. If you don't know where to start with run rate, maybe month over month, week over week, something that normalizes the data and is meaningful for you. You are going to get it wrong. We get it wrong, but it's our first wrong answer that we can improve on. Again, it's important to set your budget because without a budget, you really can't have a savings. To track against budgeting goals, we start with our budget baselines. Budgets are aggregated across our whole organization, then validated by business partners. It's important to highlight that finance provides the budget, but partner with the teams running the applications to set this budget. We consider this our starting point. Then there's the leadership priorities and goals. We have the savings targets that are set by our leadership. We then allocate savings targets out to our segments based on a percent of spend. Think of this as how you kind of allocate support costs. This is that orange box. It's the amount under budget that each business is accountable to hit. These are layered into after our budget since it's an addition. Every month, we review with our segment leaders their current state in this view to highlight where they are currently at based on actual and forecasted spend versus the variance to their annual plans. This is a quick way to see if we're on the path to savings, but it misses that final overlay of the additional savings targets. This is the number we want to work with teams to understand where we are trending. For businesses with larger gaps, We work with our leaders to identify strategic optimization opportunities that can help move the needle, since cherry picking won't always let you hit this big of a gap. The green box at the end is where our leaders review monthly and compare month over month. This ending box is what we use to get signals on savings. One thing about this is, since savings is only a factor that you can measure at the end of the year, how do we start measuring it throughout the year? Since savings is budget minus actuals, we use these signals to call out our estimated savings, since it could go up or down throughout the year. We don't want to count our chickens before they hatch. Set expectations with your leaders that this will change, but it's a good indicator to have to track. We also show them a burn down of month after month so that they can keep it updated and also understand where they stand. Keep this up leveled, keep it simple when you're measuring your savings. This process only captures savings at a business or finance level, but it misses some important aspects of cost optimization, the ones who are actually doing the optimization, the actual engineering. Engineering teams should understand their role and accountability to run it efficiently, but finance views can miss the amazing work that teams are actually doing that might not be a savings. This could be a spend reduction or a cost avoidance. So we want to highlight these optimizations. Everyone is accountable in optimization, so we have trackers across each business where engineering teams actually input their own optimizations. This is self-reported. The activity is a quick process meant to recognize the work the teams are doing well as give other teams ways to see how their peers are taking action. It's also helpful for me and my other peers to understand what signals or trends across the organization we're seeing and where we aren't seeing optimization and can better support. These trackers can include cost avoidance activities because we want teams to be able to get recognition for being efficient from the get-go. We then up-level these inputs to give leaders a monthly view of optimization activities and wins. My amazing counterpart in Disney Entertainment developed this template. It highlights the largest or more strategic optimizations that lead to run rate reductions and include optimization scoreboards so that we can track all of our FY23 run rate reductions achieved to date, including these recent ones. What you don't see here in our actual version is a link to this full tracker where engineers can self-report. That allows them to be directed to the full list where they can dive deeper. We also use this to highlight any risks we want leaders to be aware of so we can partner to mitigate or set better expectations. This view is helpful for leaders to understand the big picture of the amazing work our teams do and understand just how much is moving the needle on their run rate. Thanks for inviting me to present today. If you're interested, you can watch the full presentation on the FinOps YouTube.
Awesome. Thank you, Alee. Great to see you again. Quick note, for those of you who are companies that need to get more people FinOps certified, we've just launched a subscription that's good for large orgs looking to get people access to all the training. Best thing about this is it has access to all the FinOps professional content, which has never been made available before outside of that course. So check out that if you're interested in getting your org trained. We're running a little late, so Ken and Matthew, I hate to ask you, but if we can maybe shave a minute or two off to leave room or facts at the end, and we'll point everybody back to your YouTube afterwards. So welcome, gentlemen.
I will attempt to do that. So my name is Matthew Kruse. I'm a principal architect at Adobe. So to just dive right in, like our FinOps journey was unintentional. I started down this path. Our original goal was just to help some teams with some database performance. We embedded directly with that team, and we ended up building a tool that could identify RDS instances that were at capacity. And we were highly successful there. Like we identified the instances and we upsized them. And as part of that, we were asked to, like, could we do the same thing to find underutilized instances? And so we adjusted the tool and we identified thousands of potential RDS candidates that we could downsize. And we went out and downsized thousands of them. And that got a lot of attention. And from there, like we kind of moved on from the embedded side to the opt-in approach. We asked other teams, like, do you want to use our RDS tool? We were asked by leadership to build a similar tool for EC2. We started looking to identifying orphaned EBS volumes, and it just kind of ballooned from there. So over time, our initial success with embedding with that team led us to share those tools with other groups inside of our engineering groups. And we went to an opt-in model, and eventually that got enough attention internally that they asked us to roll that tool out to all of our teams out of Adobe. And we kind of went with an opt-out model. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed, where as today, like if you're running a public cloud account, you're going to have our tools looking into your accounts and making modifications for you. And that's kind of where we were in 2018. And now Like in 2023, we're in a fully automated, there's no opt-out, like you just get it by default model. So next slide, please. So our approach to waste cleanup is pretty much the same today as it was back in 2018. Like the first thing we do is we look at the bill. It's our guide. Higher spend typically means more opportunity for optimization and spend reduction. So we always go to the bill and look for the opportunities there. So once we found a particular resource, we write data collection for that. We grab any of the interesting KPIs or metadata around those resources, and we start looking at the data and see what insights we can see as far as areas for optimization we can go after. So we review the best practices after that. We see where we fall short. Once we understand those, we try to create a risk and reward model. So if we do this, what savings can we expect? And if we delete that resource, what's the worst thing that can happen? Once we've kind of got a lay of the land there, we'll engage with our cloud providers and we vet whatever technical strategy we came up with to see if that aligns with other customers that they know of that have done that before, or maybe there's something we're missing, or they're saying like, maybe they'll say like, yep, you're on the right track, go for it. And if all looks good, we just go out and execute and we go get those savings. Next slide, please. So our approach to waste cleanup, typically we think about it in 4 different categories. Next slide, please. First is the backlog. While we identify waste in these opportunities, they're just not interesting enough for us to go and automate right now. The monetary savings just usually don't make our engineering investment there rise to the top of our opportunity list. We've got more important things to do. Next slide. So the next is the automate. These are where the majority of our savings come from. And these usually have a path forward to automate for the entire company here at Adobe. Generally, these automation tasks can be rolled back very quickly, or we can recover them from backup. So those are typically what they kind of look like to us. The next category is skip. These offer fairly high technical challenges and little financial reward. So we just typically just kind of ignore these until the landscape changes or maybe the spend and savings opportunity changes. And finally, the partner group. So these are typically highly technical things to go after. You need subject matter experts with the individual engineering teams to go resolve them. So typically we will partner with those owning application teams. We'll offer our expertise. We will offer engineering resources, and hopefully between those two, we can go drive cost savings in that space. Next slide. The next one, please. So when we were building our platform, we had, I don't know, I think we skipped a slide. If you go back one. So when we were building our platform, we had some simple requirements. We needed multi-cloud support. We needed to scale to thousands of public cloud accounts. We needed to handle exceptionally large public cloud accounts, and we needed to integrate with basically our security stack. So some of the questions we kind of asked ourselves as we evaluated the various open source vendors or building it ourselves, we asked, can we customize the platform to our needs? Can we create our own custom policies when the various tool we chose doesn't support what we need it to do? Does the vendor cut make sense in the short term? And does it make sense in the long term? So maybe today it makes a lot of sense, but 10 years from now, maybe it doesn't. Especially in the context of the cloud providers are consistently releasing new features that may make some contract you signed with the vendor obsolete because the cloud provider has solved the problem in the space that you were going after. Next slide. Our tech stack's not very interesting. We just chose tools that we were familiar with and good with. I'd suggest as you're trying to build this out for your own engineering teams, like do what you know. And that's effectively how we made our tech choices. We ultimately decided to build our own processes just so we could, I don't know, move more quickly and build it exactly to our needs. Next slide, please. Then to kind of give you a view of like what this looks like as the end result, we implemented on Apache Airflow. Typically, we'll have a read-only process that goes out and collects the metadata and the KPIs that we're interested in. We'll review that data once we've got it collected. I mentioned before, we'll review it with our cloud providers. We'll have them validate and vet our strategy. Then finally, if everything looks good, we'll write the automation that will go out there and make changes in public cloud accounts I've never logged into personally, at least in the console. And we drive the savings that way. And that is it. So I'll turn it back over to JR.
Excellent, Matthew. Thank you so much. As we've been saying, longer presentation available on the YouTube. The other thing I would invite folks to check out, Matthew, I think, do you work for Rich Steck? Is he He's
my boss's boss.
All right. So Rich Steck gave a great keynote at FinOps X where if you've ever questioned the value of FinOps, he talked about how Adobe used the FinOps practice to pull enough money out of cloud waste, actually go and fund this product they have called Adobe Firefly. And I saw somebody talking about Adobe stock in the chat. If you ever go look at their stock and look at when Firefly launched, it's pretty amazing to see the impact on that organization. So definitely recommend checking out that keynote. And yeah, thank you, Matthew. And shout out to Ken, who also is in the longer talk on the recording. So folks, we are just a few minutes from the end. And I was chatting with Brian behind the scenes. And Brian has actually been very cool to say that he will come back to the October summit and do his full talk then. But Brian, wanted to give you 2 minutes here to introduce yourself and maybe a quick teaser about what you're going to talk about, and also what Equifax is doing with FinOps and what your role there is.
Sure. So my name is Brian Chukwu-Smith. I work as an SRE at Equifax, but I lead the FinOps efforts for our business unit. And my talk is about cost allocation, and I think it's an under-loved KPI in the FinOps world. I think it doesn't get enough credit for how it can impact the culture of our teams and lead to engineers taking action.
Brilliant. And I'm just going to tease the talk with this great slide about the problem not allocating. What is the problem there?
The problem is it ruins your unit cost. Because if you have a product line that uses a ton of shared services and then says they have cheap unit costs, they're lying.
Nice. Well, Brian, looking forward to hearing the rest of the talk when you come back. Folks, also, if you want to preview that, not surprisingly, on the YouTube. And Brian's the CIO of Equifax, Scott Johnson, as well as Global CTO for Tech, RJ Hazra, also keynoted at FinOps X. They gave a great talk about the two sides of the tech and finance coin. So definitely check that out as well on there. Wanted to wrap with where you can continue the conversation. So we've just launched a couple new series. This one is open to the public, and this FinOps B, which I love the name, is really about inspiring growth through career advancement at whatever level you're at. This program kicks off its 4-part series. I think the date is October 4th. Oh, it's right there on the screen. And it's really focused on what is a FinOps career, exploring the practice, exploring the people's journeys in that, and various paths through that. I believe Samar Arora, who was also speaking at X, you've seen in the community, one of our awards at the aircraft carrier, is going to be speaking at that one as well. And then we also have a partnership with She2, which is an organization dedicated to advancing female engineering leaders. Asher Matko from our team is going to be at their summit. So if you're in the Bay Area, consider checking that out as well. And again, we're not doing breakouts on this call to give you all an hour back. But if you want to continue the conversation, please consider checking out the community member calls. As I mentioned, there are times available in most of the major time zones around the world. You don't have to just join the one that you're in, consider joining others. And finally, if you want to meet in person, man, events are roaring back. Please come check out one of these places at events.finops.org. There have been a few questions about FinOps X in the chat. We are probably just a couple weeks away from announcing the dates. It will be San Diego again this year. There are some other large events coming in other territories that we're going to be announcing shortly as well. So looking forward to seeing you all in person somewhere, wherever in the world you are. Thank you to everybody who put this together, especially Suha Shim on our team who runs this program and did all the work to pull together all this amazing content. Thank you, Suha, for making all these speakers look so good. And we look forward to seeing everybody next year on the October Summit, which you can also get on events.finops.org. Have a great day.
JR here from the FinOps Foundation. Thank you for watching. Please go to finops.org if you want to get plugged into this amazing community. And of course, hit subscribe right here on YouTube to get all the future content. Hope to see you soon.